ironically, I turned down a Mets broadcasting job because on occasion in Detroit, because you know my personality, I think my ADD kicks in. I have to do stuff, and so they a few times
I have AD too, Chris. I know. I can
a
see
few
that
times
right
they
now.
asked me to come up in the booth and call some of the games with them, and it was a blast. I guess the Mets found out and they offered me a broadcasting job, and I turned that down. And then I turned down three or four big league hitting jobs. For the simple fact is, I just didn't want to leave anymore. You know, I had a family, I had young kids. I just didn't want to go. I didn't want to leave.
Jay Horwitz, special edition of Amazing Conversation with my old friend Gregg Jefferies. Greg, I've known you since 40 years ago, Greg.
It's crazy,
What
Jay.
happened at the time?
We're getting too old.
But you know what's the crazy thing about this? I'm looking at when you were drafted in '85 in a first round pick. I think you were 17 or 18 at the time, right?
I was 17, yeah.
And that was my 17, my fifth year with the Mets. And when you joined us in '87, the youngest player in the league, and joined us again in '88, the youngest player in the league. Now you're 58 years old. How did that happen?
Wow, thanks for reminding me, buddy.
Well, Greg, I'm
It's funny.
80.
My youngest, uh, October 30th, is turning 17. My youngest.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's I don't know where the time's gone. It's gone way too fast.
But that's crazy. Hey, Greg, so tell the people you retired in 2000. You've been a hitting instructor. You had your own academy for a while. What are you doing now? You moved to Vegas a couple of years ago, right?
Yeah, I had retire in 2000. Running down the line, I completely severed my hamstring, and which is too bad because I lost about 8 years. I wanted to play till I was 40, and I had to retire at 32. And in 2001 and two, that's when a lot of big league offers started coming in, and I just it was hard for me to grasp that I was done. And one of the most intriguing offers was when I severed my hamstring. I was with the Tigers, and I still wanted to dress out, and I still wanted to be in the dugout. So one day, Phil Gardner, who was our manager, who I was extremely close with, uh, says during the game, "Hey, Greg, come here. You know, what do you want to do? What do you want to do here?" I said, "Man, let's just hit and run," and it worked. And from that moment on, for about a month and a half, 2 months, I'd be right next to him, and we'd talk baseball, and he'd ask, "Hey, what do you want to do here?" And I'd say, "Hey, Phil, what do you want to do here?" Or whatever, just thinking it was just two guys that knew the game a little bit. Well, that winter, he calls me and he says, "Hey, I want you to be my bench coach." And
Really?
yeah,
How old were you at the time?
what's that?
How old? How old were you at the time?
32.
32.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I said, Phil, I can't thank you enough because when I told him that I was done, I went into his office and it was pretty emotional for both of us, because he liked the way I played. And when I said, yeah, they said that it's not repairable. And I had to turn him down just for the fact is I couldn't believe I was done. It took me about 2 or 3 years to actually watch baseball again. And I turned down, ironically, I turned down a Mets broadcasting job because on occasion in Detroit, because you know my personality, I think my ADD kicks in. I have to do stuff. And so they
I have AD too, Chris. I know. I can
a
see
few
that
times
right
they
now.
asked me to come up in the booth and call some of the games with them. And it was a blast. I guess the Mets found out and they offered me a broadcasting job, and I turned that down. And then I turned down three or four big league hitting jobs. For the simple fact is, I just didn't want to leave anymore. I had a family, I had young kids. I just didn't want to go. I didn't want to leave.
But right now, you do private hitting lessons,
Yeah,
Greg.
yeah, I did that. I've been doing it for 25 years. I wanted to do something, and I still love teaching hitting. And I've had some really good players, and it's been a lot of fun for me.
And one of your sons was drafted, right, a couple of
Yeah,
years ago.
Jake played for the national organization, and now he's a fireman out here in Vegas, and he found his calling.
Good for him.
He loves being a
Good for him.
fireman. He's been doing about 7 years, and it's pretty cool what he does.
Greg, what do you feel being in Vegas? Is baseball going to be now to have the football, hockey? Is baseball going to be well received when the A's get here? What's your feeling
I
on that?
think so. I think for the simple fact is the A's have a good young team. They got some good young players. Vegas is, I believe in my heart, they're going to have all four big major sports here. I do think the NBA at some point will come here too, because they have the summer leagues here. And we went to see Cooper Flagg's first game out here because my youngest son's a huge Dallas Maverick fan. And it was packed. I mean, this place was packed. It was held at UNLV, and there wasn't a seat to be had. So I do believe that it's going to be well received. Baseball, it's a tough market to have a sellout every night, especially in Vegas, because it's just a little smaller. But the Aviators, they draw really well, and it's just a great atmosphere out here.
Okay, let me take it back to so in the end of '87, you come up for a cup of coffee, get some at bats, and in '88 you start the year AAA, and you come up at the end when Backman gets hurt, and I think you hit for the last 20 plus games, you hit 320. Let me say this in a nice way. You and I think I know the situation better than anybody. For a young kid trying to break into a veteran team, it wasn't easy. I mean, it was a team in '86 won 108 games. '87 was a bad year, but we were on our way to 100 wins. I mean, talk about the difficulty of a 21-year-old kid at that time trying to break into a completely veteran team.
Well, it was a little tough, just because I replaced the team favorite. People loved Wally, and Wally was always good to me. I mean, he knew I was not writing the lineup out. Um, I didn't really know what to expect. I just came in. If I was a bench player, I would have been a bench player. But I was kind of thrown into a veteran team where Wally had a great year in '86. I was one of the catalysts on that team. And here comes some young kid that has improved himself and now jumps into the starting lineup. It was not easy. Obviously, you were there. I think the media blew it up way more than it was. It wasn't like I was on an island. And I had a bad temper. I was young. I was immature. I did some things that I shouldn't have done. You know, uh, Throwing a helmet here and there, and then I tried to stop doing that, and then the media would just say, "Well, Jeffries doesn't care anymore." So it was one of those where, okay, what should I do here? And I didn't really have anybody to go to, because the veterans kind of were their own entity, and Gary Carter was always really good to me. He was always, but he had his own stuff too. He was one of the greatest players ever played, so he had his stuff he had to worry about too and deal with. So it wasn't easy the first couple of years.
What was it like playing with Daryl and Doc and I say Darling and Jesse in '88? 100 wins, 62 losses. We beat the Dodgers 10 of 11 times that year. Unfortunately, we lose in 7 games. That's probably one of the most disappointing years. How it ended up. I mean, what was it like? And in the playoffs, you had a great playoff. I think you had 333 in the playoffs in 7 games. What was it like being thrown in that kind of action?
Well, what's funny? I remember I got brought up in San Diego, which, being born and raised in California, was a thrill for me because I had a lot of family there, friends. And I remember being in my locker the first day, looking over at Hernandez and Carter and Strawberry and Gooden. I couldn't believe I was here. I couldn't believe it. They didn't let me in the stadium. They thought I was some fan. And I started running. I started running from the security guard trying to get in the stadium, because they're like, "No, you're not a player." And I'm like, "No, I promise I am." And I didn't, back then we didn't have cell phones and I couldn't call anybody. So I just started running from the security guard trying to find a way into the stadium. Finally, I got in and I get in the locker room and I'm in awe. I'm honestly in awe by the guys that I was seeing.
It got a little bit easier, and from '88 on, one by one, the team kind of break away. Gary and Kiesler was '89. Darryl left. Was it a little bit easier when you became one of the older players on the team, and it kind of the core of the '86 team had gone away a little
I
bit?
don't know, because I think back then I was putting so much pressure on myself to try to play really well, and I can't say honestly that I enjoyed baseball at that time, just because I was kind of wanting to do this and do that and be this guy. And instead of just playing the game. When I went from hitting 270, 280 to 340, 330, 320, whatever it was, over 300, I stopped trying to be the best player in the big leagues. And I know that sounds crazy because I knew I was not going to be the best player in the big leagues. I knew I wasn't going to be better than Barry or Griffey or A-Rod. So I just tried to go out and just, I know it sounds cliche.
We had a great career, 14 years, 289 batting average. For the 5 years, the Mets is solid, close to 280 average. So, I mean, two-time All-Star with the Cardinals. He put up some great numbers. I
Well,
mean,
and
something
my
to be proud of.
dad, he gets really mad at this because I don't like talking about my career. I don't think I don't like my career. I don't like what I did. I think
Why is that?
well, I just
14 years in the big league
yeah,
is
but I
pretty
wanted to
good.
play at least 18, 19, 20 years. I really felt, but injuries just really caught up to me. I mean, it was, and people would always say, well, would you have changed your style of play? Because you know me, you saw me play, Jay. I would just go, crazy when I'd play. I'd really just throw my body out there. But that's the way I always played. I couldn't play any other way. I always thought I wasn't good enough. I really didn't feel like I was good enough just to throw my hat and bat on the mound or on the field. And I felt like I had to grind a little bit and get dirty, and that's the way I always played. But it did cost me, broken ankles, severed hamstring, torn thumb, broken fingers. But that's just kind of the way I played.
I know you say you teach hitting now. I remember one of the things. I guess your dad was a great baseball guy too. I always was enamored with hitting in a pool. That was one of your
That
things. I
still
remember
comes up
back
all the
then.
time. Yeah,
Did
I
you
just
take
did
school?
a I just did a show in New York just this past weekend. And you would not believe how many people, yeah, I got my son hitting in the pool and I'm a high school coach. My high school team hits in the pool. I go, well, it's great resistance. Muhammad Ali used to train in the pool. So my dad would come up with
Yeah.
some really, really unique things. And to this day, I still use them. I'll use some of my drills that my dad did with me with some of my players.
I want to bring up. We have some mutual friends. Your agents, the Levinsons, have been my friends for a long time. They were David Wright's agent. I think Kevin McReynolds, Todd Hundley, and they're really good people. And you still, keep in contact with them, and they're friends for life, right? They stay
Without a
on set.
question. I talk to them on occasion. We'll text a lot, just checking in. And they've been like family to me for, gosh, 40 years, maybe, 30 years. So yeah, I live with Sam. Sam was, one of my brothers. So I really appreciate everything they did. And they always had the best out for me. So I really appreciate that friendship.
Greg, is it too far to think you would try to get back in the game again with your background as a hitting coach, or in some realm, or you want to keep doing what
Yeah,
you're doing now?
it's so funny. The big talk is me taking the A's hitting job out here, and I'm like, I haven't been in baseball in 25 years. And I don't teach today's hitting. I don't teach the way they swing the bat today. I still,
You don't teach the
yeah,
the
I
uplift
still
thing.
appreciate line drives. I think striking out's an insult. I think hitting 220 for the batting average to be 305 or whatever it was to lead the league. That's a shame. It's not okay to strike out two or three times a game. And I know it's a power game, but look at the greatest hitters of all time. They still hit for pretty high averages. Bonds, Griffey, A-Rod, Babe Ruth, Willie Mays, Hank Aaron. They still hit for high averages. So there is that thought process of still hitting line drives. Mike Piazza comes to mind. He hit more line drive home runs I've ever seen. And those guys back then would get mad if they were called home run hitters because they're like, we're not. We're line drive hitters with home run power. There's a big difference.
So is it out of the question? I mean, suppose I'm the owner of the A's and you're a local guy, great background, 14 years in majors. What would happen if they approach you? Is it too
I would
tough to say
definitely
right
listen.
now, or
I
see
would
what
definitely
happened?
listen
Or
because my youngest son is a junior now in high school. So, I wouldn't want to miss any of their games because my 8-year-old is playing college baseball right now. But no, it wouldn't be out of the question.
Greg, do you still follow the Mets from
I
Vegas
really
as
don't
far as
watch
you
a lot
do,
of
or you
baseball. I
watch out?
really don't. I love football and I love hockey. I've always loved those two sports. Now I'm watching, because I grew up a Dodger fan, and that game last night was crazy. I actually watched the whole game, which for me,
I did too. That's why I was the whole. I
that
mean,
was
it was
unbelievable. I
unbelievable. I
mean,
mean,
and I'm like, I can't believe I'm watching 20 innings or whatever it was. And I was so happy for Freddie. He is such a nice guy, but the stuff that Otani's
yeah.
doing, holy man, that's a different world.
What do you think of that? 9 appearances, 2 doubles,
I
five
don't think that'll ever
walks,
be
two home
broken.
runs.
I
That's
think
crazy.
he had the greatest game that somebody could ever have other night when he hit 3 home runs and 10 strikeouts. I don't know if that will ever be duplicated, but he is so much fun to watch. And really, I just love that team
What makes him so good, Greg? I mean, what makes Otani
because he is
different from
so strong.
everybody else?
He hit a home run to center field, and the broadcaster said, "Oh, look, it was away." And I'm like, "That's not away. That ball's a little bit in." And then and I knew right away it was a little in. And they slow-moed it, and it was inside. And he is so strong, and he's able to get the barrel straight to the ball that it's tremendous what he can do. And the most impressive thing was that home run he hit yesterday on that ball inside. How quick he was in on that fastball in, and he hits a home run. So it's pretty amazing what he does.
Do you? I mean, all in all, do you? With the ghost runner. I mean, and extra inning. And they don't do it during the postseason. What do you think about the new rules
I
baseball
don't
has
like
today
I don't like
with
the
the
new
ghost
rules. I
runner and
think thrown over twice is ridiculous. I think the only rule that I like is the pitch clock, because there was times when I'd be playing, we'd be like, "Come on, man, get on the mound and throw," because I play with some slow pitchers, and in the summer in East Coast and Midwest, it gets hot, and we're sitting out there when it's 115, 120 degrees on turf. It's like you got to get the ball and throw. But the bigger bases, I hate the extra inning thing. Um, I don't like I said, the stolen base. If Ricky Henderson had that today, he'd steal 200 bases a year. I just think they're saturating it a little bit too much. I would love to see go back to a little bit old school baseball. I've done a few shows with some of these retired Hall of Fame pitchers, and we'll talk. I'm like, hey, what would you do if I hit a home run and I put a crown on and a cape and they're like, come on, Greg. I said, I know, I'd get drilled, and the guy, 2 or 3 guys behind me would get drilled. So it's just a different game. It's people say, well, it's entertaining. I said, my response is, well, if I get a base hit to win the game, I don't care what era it is. It's pretty entertaining. I just don't, a funny story. So my son Jace last year hit a double and he got on second base. And the guys in the dugout saying, come on, Jace, do it. And he wouldn't do what they wanted him to do. So after the game, I go, Jace, what did they want you to do? And they're like, well, Dad, if I hit a double, they want me to go, he's dialed. And I'm like, okay, is that it? He goes, yeah. I said, okay, you can do that, but no more. He goes, wait, really? I go, yeah, okay. Because, my kids give me the greatest compliment without knowing it. They said, Dad, you're almost too old school. I'm like, you know what? I'll take it. I'll wear that for sure.
Greg, what's your favorite game memory at bat that sticks in your
It was
mind?
really cool for me. Obviously, my cycle that I hit for. My daughter was born that night.
Right.
But my first game back to Shea, and we were facing Dwight Gooden. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't know the response I'm going to get. So as I'm running before the game and they're doing the announcements, and I think I'm batting third, the announcer goes, and please welcome back Gregg Jefferies. And I thought that was so cool. Now I'm waiting for the response. And it was all cheers. And I'm like, I got pretty emotional with that, because I know my first 3 or 4 or 5 years, I didn't live up to expectations, which has always bothered me. Because if I just would have played the game and I just would have, taken things in and said, look, slow down a little bit, Greg, just slow down. I know I could have done something way different in New York, which I would have loved to, because that was my team that I was drafted by. But when they did that, I thought that was actually, and nobody told me they were going to do it, which was pretty cool.
Greg, you had, you weren't hit. You were very respectable numbers, close to 280. One year you led the league in doubles with 40. You had 290 close that year. So I mean, all in all, I mean, you look back with a lot of happiness on your stay in New York. I mean, you still get appearances, right? To call you back. I mean, okay, do
Yeah, I
shows
do a
and
lot of
stuff.
shows in New York, and the people are wonderful. They're so welcoming, and the comments they make. The one thing I've noticed about doing shows is you get better as the your years pass on. You know, meaning, oh, Greg, remember the third batting title that you won? I'm like, yeah, sure, it was great. Yeah, Greg, I can't believe you're a career 340 hitter. So I just let them go. I'm like, yeah, I'll tell you a funny story. So I'm doing a show in Philly, and three guys come up to me and say, Greg, we drove 3 hours to come to apologize to you. And I'm like, what are you talking about? He goes, do you remember when you were with Kansas City in Yankee Stadium and there was three guys ragging you unmercifully? And I actually remember these three guys. They were right by third base, and it was every moment just ragging and ragging and ragging me. And at the end of the game, I tossed all three of them a baseball, and they all threw it onto the field. And I just laughed. And they came to see me and said, Greg, we are so sorry. You were so cool to us. And we drove all the way out here to apologize to you. And I've said, man, I remember you guys. You guys were good. So that's
How long of
this had to be
a
this had to
period
be
that
2 years ago.
evaporated from?
2 years ago at a Philly show, these
Wow.
guys drove out 3 hours to come say they're sorry. And I took pictures with them, and I gave them three more balls. I go, you guys going to keep these now? They're like, absolutely. So it was really pretty cool. East
Well,
Coast people, they're just different. They're
well,
extremely passionate. I
yeah.
I grew up in California, where they show up in the third inning and leave in the seventh inning. It's just a different
Yeah.
vibe in California, where East Coast, they are hardcore for sure.
Hey, Greg, I appreciate the time. A lot of good memories for me. I can't believe I've gotten older. You've gotten older. A long time ago, I was a baby, and you were a little bit younger than the baby. And I can't. That's one thing, dude. As always, Greg Jefferies, comma, the youngest player in the league. Jeffries, comma, the youngest
I
player
don't
in,
get it
in
though,
the
Jay.
in
You're
the
you're getting
playoffs.
better looking, and I'm getting
Well, listen,
uglier. How is that possible? What's going on? You look
no,
like a
no, no.
model.
Greg, only my late mother ever told me. Greg, This is my
Well,
46th
I
year with
mean,
the Mets.
you're going to be in the Hall of Fame
46
soon.
years.
So if anybody needs to, I'll put my
Well,
name to you
whatever.
for
But
sure.